Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fitaris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have... Daioh! An obscure arcade shoot 'em up. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Athena, Daioh originally released to arcades in 1993. This title never received ports to any other systems up until this Arcade Archive release, so it's a relatively obscure shoot 'em up that at least I wasn't familiar with before this release. So it's great to have it on the PlayStation 4 and the Nintendo Switch, which is the version we're looking at today. It's really similar to other early 90s vertical shoot 'em ups, so if you like that era of gaming and the shoot 'em ups that it has, then I highly encourage you check this one out, as especially the international version is a lot of fun. With that said, let's dive in and you can see what kind of gameplay we have here. So unfortunately, once you put credits into the machine, it just gives you this black screen. We are going to be playing 2 players simultaneous, as this does support it, so that's how we'll see the game. And this is the international version. That is an important distinction to make. Starting the game, we're taken to this relatively formulaic but fun launch sequence where we're launching from the carrier. So as far as the vertical scrolling element is concerned, we do have the ability to scroll the stage a little bit left and right. That's important to go and note, as sometimes you can scroll on enemies and bullets that could spell your downfall. So initially we start off with all weapons available, and that's one of the really fun things about specifically the international version. On the Japanese version, that's not the case. I'll discuss that in just a moment. But we have 3 weapons. The base Vulcan, which is your standard machine gun. As you power it up, it does gain a spread, which is pretty neat. There's this awesome homing laser, which is kind of similar to what you would see from something like, say, the Raiden series. And lastly, we have the missile. Those 3 weapons each kind of have their place. In most situations, I would encourage you to use the laser. The one thing to note, it does take a second to switch between the laser and any other weapon in the game. If you're switching between like missile and the Vulcan, for example, there's not really any lag there, but going to the laser, you will have about a second or so where you're not firing. So we find ourselves fighting the first boss. This is a good place to discuss the other elements. So every single weapon in the Japanese version has a bomb associated with it. And depending on which weapon you have equipped, you would have that bomb. However, since we have all the weapons available to us, we have all the bombs available to us. There's one that's ties to the Vulcan, one that's for the laser, and one that's for the missile. The one that I used there against this particular boss was the one that matches the Vulcan. It's pretty neat you have each one available to you. And then here we find ourselves at this second stage, and it's a good time to start talking about the power-ups. So the weapons can power up from level 1 to 4, and they all share the same power level, so you don't need to worry about picking or choosing your favorite weapon to power up. One thing that's neat is it takes 1 power up more per level to increase the level of that weapon. So for example, if you're going from 1 to 2, it just takes 1. But if you're going from 2 to 3, then it takes 2 power-ups. So I do like that there's that little bit of scaling, making it a little more difficult to increase your power. When you die, it doesn't go and drop you all the way down to base power, it'll just lower your weapon level by 1, so I do also appreciate that kind of gameplay mechanic. So there we've seen the laser bomb. It's in a lot of cases the one I kind of feel is the most useful, as it does span the entire vertical section of the stage that you're in. It will clear enemy bullets, but you aren't invulnerable while using the bomb, so keep that in mind. And then the last one is the missile bomb, and the missile bomb is probably the most powerful, but it's also the most localized. It basically is kind of a nuke right around your ship itself, so in a situation where you're using it, you have to be careful with which part of the screen you're in, as it's not going to be as effective depending on the situations. And that's basically Daioh served up for your enjoyment. So as far as other power-ups are concerned, in the Japanese version, you would pick up a different colored power-up depending on which weapon you wanted to have equipped. So it was the usual red for the Vulcan, the blue for the laser, and the yellow for the missile. But in the international version, it changes the yellow to just yellow is the only one of those colors that we see. Then it changes that one to just a straight up point power up. There's also bomb pickups, 1-ups, and then the P's for increasing the level of your ship. So here we find ourselves fighting the second form of the first, or rather the second stage boss. It's kind of neat that it has like the multiple heads and then like the kind of brain part that we need to destroy. The boss fights are pretty fun, but generally short. And there's one other thing that I haven't really discussed about, as it's less of an issue when you're playing the game co-op. So the game does employ a checkpoint system. When you die in a single-player game, you'll be reset to a checkpoint unless you're fighting a boss, with one exception. But unlike most checkpoint systems, this one doesn't trouble me as much, as I feel the checkpoints are actually fairly generous. In fact, there'll be many points where after I've died, the checkpoints actually set me further ahead than where I actually was when I died. The sole exception to that is the stage 7 and I guess stage 14, like where you're just fighting the final boss, and in those stages you'll be reset to the beginning of the stage when you die, regardless of like where you're at in the particular boss fight. Which is different from other boss fights, whereas if you die in a boss fight, you'll just be restarted where you died. But I do appreciate that they took that route with the boss fights themselves. It makes me not as frustrated with the checkpoint system, which generally isn't my favorite. So there you have it. That is Daioh. Serve it for your enjoyment. It's definitely a fun shoot 'em up from this era, especially with the international version and all of the weapons available to you at all times. I really appreciate that kind of the design idea, as it feels unique for the gameplay of the era. So the minus flavors to note, just that little frustration with the checkpoints on the final boss in particular. And also, there is, this is a minor complaint just having to go and do with the power of the system that it was created on, but there is a little bit of slowdown when you play the game co-op, so something to keep in mind. But as far as on the plus flavors are concerned, I definitely love the fact that you have all 3 weapons available and all 3 bombs available to you at all times. So that's a huge design choice that I think makes this game stand above a lot of the more generic vertical scrollers from the era. And then in addition to that, it's just a straightforward, fun vertical scroller where, like I said, if you enjoy the shoot 'em ups of the early 90s, then this is one that I think you should definitely give a try. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful week yourself, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.